So you're the former city manager of Miami. That's a very big deal.
Yes.
And you want to be mayor, all right?
Yes,
and
sir.
we're gonna discuss a little bit how that election perhaps was moved from 25 to 2026.
Not going to move. Not going to move.
So you have quite the impressive resume. I just want to go over this. So you have your BA in International Studies, then you have your Master's in Latin American Studies from Tulane, and then you have your Master's in Strategic Studies at the U.S. Naval War College, and you have your PhD in International Relations from the University of Miami.
Yes, sir.
You're one smart guy.
Well, that just means I'm old.
All right. If we're around long enough, we get to do that. So congratulations on that.
Thank you, sir.
So you served in the military for a long time.
I did.
Tell us about that.
I spent 26 years in the Army. I was an intelligence officer, and I was able to retire as a colonel, and it's the most fun I've ever had. I had no intentions of ever joining the military, and I joined kind of on a lark, and I never looked back. I had a blast.
That's wonderful. And thank you for decades of protecting us.
Thank you, sir.
So, whenever they say, sir, I know I'm in trouble. Okay, so let's talk about when you, at some point or another, you said, I want to become the city manager of one of the most important cities in the entire globe. Tell us about that process.
Well, it really wasn't, I want to become the city manager. It was, I had just spent 5 years as the airport director at CEO of Miami International Airport and 4 others, the Miami-Dade Aviation Department. And I was looking forward to some time off. And lo and behold, the current mayor, Francis Suarez, had just recently been elected. And he reached out and asked if I would consider being the city manager. And, I thought about it. To my knowledge, I think I'm the only city manager that we've had that actually lives in the city of Miami. And I thought, what a great opportunity. It's not a career change, just an opportunity.
So big cities, big companies always strife with a lot of people on every side.
Right.
But most recently, the city commission, in its infinite wisdom, voted on a vote of 3-2, if I remember correctly, to extend the terms of the existing existing terms. So the election would be in a year and a quarter from now, meaning a year from November. And I think there's some lawsuits to try to overturn that.
Right.
So tell us about, well, number one, what you think about it. Number two, who brought the lawsuit, and what do you think your chances of prevailing?
Well, listen, I think it was an abomination of our city charter. Our city charter is very specific. It says, it lays it out. It says when there will be elections, okay? Odd number of years. And for these individuals to take the liberties that they did with the city charter, and essentially what they did was they're hanging all of this on a similar issue in the city of North Miami, where they extended their term in office considerably. And apparently a judge at that time thought it was okay. But that's about it. And when they took their second vote, which, by the way, let me just back up. Before the first vote, because it was 2 readings of an ordinance, before the first vote, Commissioner Miguel Gabela, I thought very smartly, reached out to the Attorney General and said, what do you think? And the Attorney General wrote him back a letter saying, this is not good. Don't do this. This is, I mean, he was not as brutal, I will say, as he was in his second letter, when after it passed first reading 3-2, then the Attorney General sent the mayor a letter, an unsolicited letter. And it was pretty harsh. I mean, it was almost like a cease and desist. Don't do this. It's unconstitutional. If you do this, we reserve the right as a state to take any and all issues to stop it, and there will be consequences. And then they went ahead and did it anyway, which, by the way, I thought was astounding, because the mayor is an attorney, the head of the city commission is an attorney, and you would have thought if you get a letter from the chief legal officer of the state saying, hey, don't do this, at a very minimum, they could have said, let's defer this item. Let's engage the Attorney General and find out what his issues are. But no.
People have been calling us, and the essence of what they were saying is, so they extended their terms by a year. They financially benefited significantly.
Correct.
So if they were at a 4-year term and now it's 5-year term, all right, that's like a 25% increase.
Well, but not only that, but they extended the election And then it was sort of like a footnote. And oh, by the way, since we've extended the elections, we're going to extend our office holders as well. So they all get an extra year's salary and benefits. But the issue for me, Michael, is this is a constitutional issue. The city has misinterpreted the city charter, whether they did it willfully or through neglect. The city charter is the constitution of the city of Miami. They misinterpreted it, and they misinterpreted it for personal gain. I'm going to be in office. Oh, by the way, and not only are individuals who are termed out by the city charter, the mayor and one commissioner are termed out, they get an extra year, and then another commissioner, the chair, who would be running for re-election this November, also gets an extra year, and then the remaining commissioners all have an extra year added to their terms. So this goes well beyond, the mayor and one commissioner. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't smell right. It stinks, and that's why I filed the lawsuit.
Okay, good for you. Let's talk about some key things that residents and business people are concerned with. Let's talk about, we hear all the time, the affordable issue of housing in the city of Miami and throughout South Florida. What is something that you would like to see happen within the city to make housing better?
Okay, so let me just back up real quick, but that's a great question. One of the things that I did when I first announced was I said, the minute I win, I'm going to call the governor and have him send his Florida Doge team to the city of Miami so they can tell us where the money is. And I'm going to explain that now. When I left being city manager 5 years ago. When I left, our city budget was $1.5 billion. This year's city budget is $3.5 billion. So we're looking at a $2 billion increase in the city budget, and voters come to me and say, where is it? Do we have better streets? Do we have less crime? Where is it? On top of that, extra $2 billion, you have a $400 million resilience bond, if you recall, which was approved by the voters in Mayor Regalado's last year. It's $400 million, $300 million of which are for resiliency, $100 million is for affordable housing. Where is it? If it's been used, we should know. It's just sort of like, it's just there. And then on top of that, you add about another $130, $140 million in ARPA funds from the federal government, the American Recovery Relief, et cetera. What'd they do with it? So my issue is, if we have a $3.5 billion budget, and I can get some smart people from outside the city come in, and let's just say for the sake of argument, they can shave 10% in waste, fraud, and abuse, or ineligible funding, to be more kind. That's $350 million. We could do a lot with $350 million. The affordable housing issue is one that really hits home with me because, I have one daughter who really can't afford to buy a house today. And I have another daughter who lives in a house that I helped her purchase. So this is something which I see regularly. We are in a situation right now where we're drawing in people from outside the city, whether they're hedge fund people, tech people. If you're living, if you're, they call it, if you're a tech bro, as they say, and you live in San Francisco.
Did I just hear the PhD guy
I said tech bro. I said tech bro. I can also quote Dante too. So okay. I mean, we could go back and forth. But if you are paying $10,000 a month for an apartment in San Francisco, coming to Miami and paying $6,000 a month for a condo, man, you just died and went to heaven.
Yes.
But you know what? People here can't afford $6,000.
And we are, there's a story, I think it was in the Herald, about now the inequity, the difference between the average folks.
Correct.
Financially, and you have all these very wealthy people that are coming in that are driving, unfortunately driving up the price because they're willing to pay for that.
So I call that, this is a tale of two cities, right? If you're on a boat, a very large boat, and you look at the Miami skyline, it's like, wow, skyscrapers, $20, $30 million condos. But if you're on the other side of those skyscrapers, where I live, our neighborhoods are suffering. Our neighborhoods are in disrepair, and people cannot afford it. When you graduate from FIU or UM or what have you, the chances are very high that you're going to leave Miami because you can't afford to either buy or rent here.
Well, I was in downtown again last night. I have some family that lives there. So I'm learning to walk around there and not be so amazed. In the old days, at night, you didn't want to walk around.
Right.
And now I'm seeing families walking around. And it seems as though it's very much occupied. People seem to be pretty happy. People are moving in there. But yet we hear now that there seems to be some decrease in the values of some of those condos for a lot of reasons. One of the things that I hear is because of the sea change, and sometimes the roads are filled with water at the worst times, and and traffic and mobility. I know
Correct.
CITT, Citizens Independent Transportation Trust, talks about mobility, not about the traffic. When we were downtown, we was watching all the different types of mobility. You had the motor scooters. You had
Correct.
You had the skateboard with the thing on it, which is motorized. You had the people running. Then you had people on the skates. So the mobility issue seems to be alive and well. Well, what can the city do to improve the ways and ways people move around downtown?
Listen, when I was a city manager, if you recall, 5 years ago, there was a big push by all of these scooter companies. They all wanted to come here. What I forget their names, but every single one. I remember I had somebody come to me, a representative from a company that said, "Hey, we want to have the first license," and I saw the actual agenda approval, and I put a 1 on it. Okay, you're the first, and that went away, inevitably because of politics, because of the way we're organized. We have 5 commissions, 5 commission districts, and 5 commissioners who, unfortunately, for the past, I will say, maybe 10 years, have all operated as mini mayors. So it isn't what's good for the city, it's what's good for me. What have you done for me lately? Why does Michael Miller's district have 3 more parks than mine? Why does the big park that he has a bigger pool than mine? And when you explain this to people, listen, I worked at the White House. Okay, I'm used to having, lofty, heavy, profound, philosophical disagreements and conversations. Don't come to me and hold up traffic, if you will, metaphorically, because you want a bigger pool, or because your sidewalks are cracked, or you have more cracked sidewalks than the other guy. So you end up with a city budget where everybody wants to outdo the other guy. Again, it was very hard for me to absorb, because we live in a city. We live in a great city. And we live in a city that, hell, we live here, we're in a place where people pay to vacation.
Yes.
We have no, when I was there, we have no marketing budget. Why? Because everybody knows where Miami is. We have no real need to draw people to our city. They come anyway. But unfortunately, all of these people that come from out, the hedge fund guys, the tech guys, they come and then they establish themselves in their own bubble, right? I'm going to rent 2 floors on Brickell, and this is my world. And if I need to deal with the city, I will hire a lawyer and a lobbyist and let them deal with the city. But for the rest of the residents, we're the ones that have to deal with the city regularly. We have to deal with the messed up streets, the traffic, the garbage not getting picked up, and the crime.
Let's talk a little bit about, throughout the county, there's over 100,000 septic tanks that are moved by the feds and by the state and by some of the cities to try to fix the approximately 9,000 septic tanks, mostly on the east side of Miami, that are defective.
Mm-hmm.
What can the city do to expedite that?
Well, the city can work with the county. The city can look for ways to maybe even subsidize that, if they would, as a way of speeding it up. Hey, let's expedite this. And what's it going to take? If it's going to take X amount of money, this is important. We need to do it. It's, I don't believe in these 10 and 15-year projects, which, by the way, is one of the reasons I left the airport, because by the time I was ready to go, the next project is what we're doing now. 10-year projects, building. I'm not an engineer. That's not fun. Let somebody else do that. But I think the city can do a lot. In fact, real quick, getting back to your housing question, the governor has floated the idea of not paying property taxes. Well, I would like to find out, and I'm doing some research right now, and what's the city portion of property taxes? Is there a way for us to, with savings, with investments, can we pay our residents the city portion
Mm-hmm.
of the property taxes. At the very least, it gives folks more money in their pocket. Okay, I'm not going to tell you that we're going to buy people a home, but it makes affordability a lot better.
I'm glad you brought that up. Recently, it's been reported in the Miami Herald that the Miami-Dade County has its a deficit, depending on which figure you want to believe, but the figure being floated is between 320 and 400 million dollars. I believe they have a budget of 12 to 13 billion dollars. It's hard for me to imagine, with all the experts that work for the county in the projection department and the accounting department, that they didn't know this was coming a year or two ago.
Michael,
What happened?
Michael, politics is not a discipline for common sense. I spent 5 years at the county. I was blessed by the fact that the airport does not even appear on the county budget. The airport is a self-sustaining enterprise fund. We raise our own funds. In fact, we not only raise our own funds to keep the airport afloat, we pay all county employees from our own funds. We pay for paid in the past, we paid for a fire battalion from the airport funds, from a police district from airport funds. And the thing is that people don't want to find cuts. If you're in politics, you always want to give out gifts, largesse. I remember back then, we had bus lines that maybe had 2 passengers a day. Think about that. Nobody wants to make the hard cuts. I was convinced, and listen, I used to sit with my fellow department directors back then at meetings, and we would sit and talk, and one of the conversations we would have is, okay, if you fired 10% of all county employees, would it make a difference? Would we feel a negative? And then the responses were usually 10. How about 15? Because there really is an abundance. If you look at the numbers of county employees, it's huge, huge. And by the way, county employees make a lot of money, more so than the average taxpayer here in the county.
In 2023, the county's waste-to-energy facility, incinerator in Doral, burnt down. So the commission, because they're ultimately the ones that have to approve it or have not made a decision yet. Currently, there's a South Dade landfill where stuff is going, and now the county is paying $500 million a year to ship all our stuff to the middle of the state. I actually find it abhorrent that in 2025, we are continuing to bury all of this stuff.
Right.
And the recycling program for the county is a disaster, right? Including which they have gone around and look into your blue bin, and if the stuff's not right in there, they give you a warning, 3 warnings, and then they give you a ticket. That is a volunteer program, and so they want to punish the people, right? Because they're not quite getting it right. And even part of their message is, you can put pizza boxes in there, but they can only be lightly soiled. I'm thinking, if we have to think what we put in there, lightly soiled.
Does this pizza box qualify as soiled or not?
All right. So let's talk about what the city of Miami is doing.
Real quick, we talk about this incinerator. Remember, we have been trying to build rapid transit in Miami-Dade County for 20 years, and we can't get it right because every commissioner, somehow or another, I'm talking county commissioner, they want rapid transit through their district. And they would rather vote no across the board than have to vote yes in rapid transit through somebody else's district. And it's just that crass. It really is. You sit there and talk to these people, and they'll tell you, oh, that's a great idea, but I need 7 votes.
So for clarification, you have the mayor typically,
right?
All right, you have the mayor. In some cases, they're a strong mayor. And then you have the city manager and some others. But the commission, they're the ones that get the information, and they are the ones that kill it or support that. So it must have been tough for you as a city manager to have all these different people, each wanting their own stuff.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And nobody wanting to really intrude on the other folks' stuff. Well, if we could, let's get back to the garbage and the recycling. What's the city of Miami? What can you do when you become mayor?
Well, we have our own recycling program. The city is very good at recycling. We also have our own, I don't want to use the term recycling, but for example, for hurricanes, we have our own contracts for people coming out and picking up all of the dead trees, everything that's blown away, and taking it to the facilities. We can work with the county, but we don't have an incinerator in the city. We don't have what the county is looking for. We don't have the only landfill, if you will, is interestingly enough on what's going to be at the bottom of a soccer stadium, because Mel Reese Golf Course was originally created with landfill, with ash from another city of Miami incinerator that shut down.
It's not going to sink, is it?
No, but
For sure.
But interestingly, there was a time when Mel Reese Golf Course was there, where they would have programs for little kids, and they would tell the little kids, "You're not allowed to sit down on the ground because of the contamination in the soil."
So here we are. This is now almost August 2025. Is there going to be an election in November?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
When is it going to judge and the appeal is going to be heard?
Our original case was heard yesterday before Judge Shore. We put together a compelling argument. My lead attorney is a former justice of the Florida Supreme Court. We argued complete opposite of the city. The city essentially hung their argument on the fact that if the city of North Miami did this, then it's okay for us. I mean, that was really the argument. They didn't quote a lot of legal precedents. They didn't even quote the city charter. Our team got up there and we quoted Florida statutes, the Florida Constitution, the home rule charter. There was actually an attorney from the county that had to support my position that what they did was against the county home rule charter.
So this is a pretty urgent matter.
Yes.
So, and do you think this judge is going to decide relatively quickly?
I suspect she asked both sides to submit draft orders for her, which essentially is, if you rule for me, this is what we want you to say. If you rule for them, this is what they want you to say. Regardless of what she does, and I'm sure that she's going to be a very thoughtful person, this will go to the appeals court. So I suspect that this will be ruled on probably no later than Monday. Today's Thursday.
Okay.
And then from there, regardless of who wins, and I tell people this is round one. Regardless of who wins, this is going to the 3rd District Appellate Court.
People have to pay attention to this and the candidates have to pay attention because if you figure that people are not out campaigning, the odds of them achieving some success is less than if you keep campaigning.
Well, yes, the answer is yes. But I have friends that live in New York City, and they're calling me and saying, "Hey, we're getting out of here." And the moral of the story is municipal elections matter.
Yes.
You have a guy in New York City who is an open anti-Semite, Islamist, member of the Communist Party, if you will, and the guy is the Democratic nominee for mayor. Now, interesting statistic. Only 9% of the eligible registered voters in the city of New York voted. Okay.
Elections have consequences.
And elections matter. And all of a sudden, people are now breathing in a bag and saying, "Oh my God, what are we going to do now?" And I say that because elections matter in Miami, because we too have really bad turnout. And you know what? We may not elect a communist, but we could sure elect somebody that we don't want with the levers of power in the city.
Okay, we have 2 minutes left. I would like you to touch on people that have helped you in your life, perhaps mentors. Maybe they're still with us or they're not. And if you look right into the camera right over there, there you go. Talk right there.
Mentors, very simple. When I was in high school, I had wonderful, I'm from Tampa originally. I had wonderful teachers that encouraged me. My parents, always, because to them, education is key. I remember when I was in the Army, and the Army leadership offered to give me a doctoral scholarship and teach at West Point. And I asked my father, "What do you think I should do?" Because it's going to take me out of the traditional Army battalion, brigade command world. And he said, "You know what? Do whatever you want, but education is forever. Nobody takes education from you." And then my military mentors, General Pete Pace, who was the Southcom commander here, then he became the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, somebody that I just learned an inordinate amount from him on leadership. Good leadership, how to recognize bad leadership. Leadership is about people. You can't be successful unless your people are successful. And your people are the ones that are going to make or break you, and you have to work as a team. So again, I'm very blessed. I've had varied experiences. I've worked at the White House. I found working for the president, President Bush, was to be like a humbling experience. Immigrant kid from Tampa gets to work at the White House. And then after that, immigrant kid from Tampa becomes the head of immigration. Doesn't happen anywhere else except in the United States. And I'm blessed. And I could have stayed in Washington. I didn't. I wanted to come back to Miami. This is my hometown. And I wanted to bring, if you will, this sounds kind of interesting. Miami is the magic city. Let's bring the magic back. Let's stop with the lawsuits. Let's stop with the legal settlements. Let's stop with the accusations, the theater, the circus. Let's bring serious, sober leadership back to the city. And that's what I'm about. I'm a very boring, serious, sober person.
Emilio, thanks so much for being here. Continued success to you.
Thank you, sir.
People look to find out more about you, they just go on Google and find you every place.
Emilio for Miami. They could Google me,
Okay.
My website. Again, I'm in this for the long run. There will be an election November.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us. And let's get to this camera. Folks, thanks for joining us. Remember, take care of yourselves and your family. Have a good day.